in. Good morning, everybody. I see lots of good morning, good Monday in the chat box. Enjoy seeing that. Hope you all had good, epic evaluations, got some helpful feedback to continue to progress you on your journey. It looks like a lot of you got feedback to be on camera more often because I'm seeing a lot more smiling faces. I appreciate that. That's always nice to see. All right. So, before we jump into today's lesson, today's assistant instructor is Majida. Majida, are you there?
Yes.
How are you, Majida?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for asking. So, Majida, why don't you start us off by sharing a little bit about yourself? Where are you from? Why did you join Europe? And now I forget. Oh, our fun fact. What's a fun fact about you?
So I am Majida Naz. I'm originally from my country, Pakistan, and I joined Europe because honestly, after high school, like the thought of college, like it wasn't really like the best idea because like it was, I felt like I'm like going back to high school, but I'm just paying for it instead.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be a lot of work. So I really didn't want to do something that was long term. And I needed to find it, like, I wanted to help my family financially.
Mm-hmm.
So Europe was my best opportunity. So that's the reason why I ended up joining Europe. And a fun fact about me, I can't think of anything, but um,
I'm sure there's lots of. What do you like to do in your free time, Majida? Do you have a hobby or something that you enjoy?
mm, um,
Do you have a favorite kind of ice cream? What's your favorite movie?
oh, I love ice cream, so
Okay.
like that's my thing that I'll go to anything. And then also I love driving. That's just my own specialty. Like I could be driving for hours and I get out the car for an hour, I'll still want to go back to driving. So that's something I really do like and enjoy.
Wow. Okay, that's really interesting. So, like, what's been like the longest trip you ever taken driving, like by
So
hours?
so we went to there were two long drives that I did with my sister.
Hmm.
And just like few weeks back, we went to Albany, like by Albany for Apple
Wow.
Pay. So
Cool.
that was like around like 3 hours long. So that was the longest one I believe we did. And then we also did one to Roman University in New Jersey,
Hmm.
which was also 3 hours long. So around actually 3 hours going and coming back. So yeah.
Wow, that's definitely a long drive. That's pretty interesting. So you enjoy driving. Pretty
Mhm.
cool. All right, Majida. Now the last section is what question do you want to ask your colleagues?
Where would you guys see yourself if you weren't in Europe? Where do you guys would see yourself right now?
Oh, awesome question, Majida. How would you answer that? Where would you see yourself if you weren't in Europe right now? Everyone else in the chat box.
Personally, I think I would be going to college right now and like crying because I wouldn't want to do it online. getting
Yeah,
getting the assignments done. That's pretty much it.
yeah. You think you'd be doing college online as opposed to being in Europe?
Yeah.
Yeah, and if I wasn't in Europe right now, I'd probably would still be working at my previous job called the Mind Gym. So, and also that was all digital as well, and it wasn't nearly as much fun as working with all of you because working with adults is not as exciting as working with young adults because you can have a little more fun. So awesome. All right, so let's see the answers here. Working a bad job, probably being college, online courses, work, going to school full time, working, annoying you about college, Amna says, acting school and struggling, Karina says, working with kids, being processed to be a court officer, I have no idea, at a dead end job, still at home looking for work, working at a gas station making music, working or going back to college, working at my previous job and doing art, I'd probably be in college. It's a good question, Majida. Thank you so much for being today's assistant instructor. Just a quick reminder to everybody that Majida is the person that can interrupt me today. So if you have a question or a comment, you raise your digital hand. Majida can say, "Hey, Eric, so and so has their hand up," and we can go ahead and address that. So let's go ahead and jump into today's lesson. In the chat box, please populate it with what are the topics or themes or ideas that we spoke about during week 1 of project management? What were some of the things we chatted about last week? Yep, Andre says agile versus waterfall. What a project is and isn't. Hannah says initiating a project. Andre, can you please unmute yourself and tell us the difference between agile and waterfall? It's an important distinction.
Agile is focused more on knowledge work, and waterfall is more like steps that were already made, like plans were made beforehand, and results and communication is important.
Yes, exactly. So agile is more of a style that you use in knowledge work, particularly for building technology. All of you are IT students. They'll be getting very comfortable in agile in your internship in your career. But it's essentially doing what are called sprints. These are anywhere from a week to 30 days where you just do different additions of your project and then you go back and test it and make adjustments as you go. Waterfall is the more traditional model of project management, and that's the idea that we already know the end goal before we even start. So if you're building a bridge, you're using waterfall because you're going to know everything about that bridge before the shovel even touches the ground. But if you're building an app or a website, you're going to use agile. That way you can stay, lean or like literally have agility as you go. So thank you so much, Andre. Let's see what else. David Torres says every project starts with a problem. That is right. That's important to know. So Manny, budget, how project management works, and projects. Excellent. Thank you. Rahul, you wrote the initiation of a project. Rahul, I'll put you on the spot, but you can put in the chat box if you want to throw Rahul a lifeline. What are the other steps in the life cycle of a project? Do you recall, Rahul? Initiation is the first one. Remember what number 2 is? You can unmute yourself. Yeah.
Should be initiation. I believe the information gathering would be one. But what would that process be called? I'm not sure. I think I'm gonna use the lifeline.
All right.
Planning.
Yep.
There you go.
There you go. So Amadul's got it right. Next step is planning. So you have the problem. Then you have the initiation. Let's kind of get some ideas going. Then you start planning.
Would objectives be one of them, or?
So objectives would come under the planning. Yeah. So there's like kind of like the 5 big buckets, and then like there's smaller things underneath them. So yes, Jalissa is right. Then it's execution, actually getting it done. What's the 4th step? I want to remember. The 4th step is monitoring, making sure that thank you, Amadul, making sure that everything is going according to plan. And the last step is closing. That's when you evaluate how you've done things, how everything came to be. So excellent. Thank you so much, Rahul, for getting us started with that. And then there was one, there we go. Mahmood, problem statement, goal, and objectives. Mahmood, can you explain what those terms mean?
Well, with any project, you have essentially 3 components. You have the initial problem statement, which is what's the problem we want to solve and what's our idea for solution. The goal is what's your actual goal, what's the solution you want. And the objective is just a more detailed list of how you're going to achieve that goal. So it has the various steps that you want to follow.
Excellent. Thank you, Mahmood. That was perfect. And Ashley Gavin, what a project is and isn't. Ashley, what's the difference between a project and not a project?
I remember you said like a project is like something that's new. It's not in the ordinary, and it's not like your everyday work. But when you do a project, did I just say what it isn't or what it
Yeah,
is?
what's
I know what it isn't. Okay,
yeah.
And what a project is like something new. So like you have to plan it out and execute it and make sure everything's like planned out accordingly. Otherwise, it could fall apart.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much, Ashley Gavin. So really what it is, a project is a temporary, event, as a clear start date, as a clear end date, typically is cross collaborative. What Ashley said, she's spot on. There's planning in the process. It's unique, exactly, Christian. Whereas, not projects are things like meeting with my manager for a meeting, shredding documents, checking email, clocking in. That's just kind of everyday things that you do in the workforce. And when you get into the working world, you'll do both. You'll have everyday tasks and you'll have routine tasks, as Rahul put perfect. And then you'll also have projects. So that's just a quick recap of what we discussed last week. A few quick housekeeping matters. The first thing is this. Tomorrow there is no class. Like for anybody, there's no program for Europe tomorrow. Tomorrow is the election day. So please, if you have not voted and you're able to, please go out and vote. And then also for my class, this is not for anybody else, but just for me, there is no class on Wednesday either. We're doing what's called an async day. So I have a 30-minute long video that I want you to watch and a deliverable I want you to complete. And that's available. And I'll be online on Wednesday as well. I'll be online Tuesday. So if you have questions, email me. If you want to meet up on Zoom for a few minutes, we can do that as well. But today's class is, going on. No class tomorrow for anybody because it's election day. Wednesday, my class is not meeting. You just have to watch a video. And then Thursday, it's back to class as usual. Are there any questions on that? You can raise your hand. If not, we can go ahead with today's lesson.
Eric, so you said tomorrow there's no program.
There's no program, because it's election day. So none of
And
your
Wednesday for you?
and Wednesday just for me, there's no class. You'll have to talk to your other instructors to see if they're having class. I know Vanessa's having class. I don't know about the others. So, but for my class, we are not meeting on Wednesday. Any other questions on the schedule? Okay, and then now the other thing is that I have a meeting at 11:30, so we're ending class early today. So let's go ahead and get started. We have a lot to cover in a very short amount of time. So, Majida, can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. So we've talked last week about the initiation, about the planning, and that brings us to this fancy document that we use in project management called a project charter. With your hand raised, do me a favor, and I'll ask Majida to call on you, your digital hand. What do you notice about this document? Like, what's something that's unique about it, or surprising, or kind of worth mentioning? And then we'll go ahead and explore what this document does and how it works. So Rahul, I see your hand was the first one. Go ahead.
Hey again, guys. In this document, it looks very organized. It's well fitting for the eye. Every row and column have clear definitions. Clear, the second you look at it, you know what's going to be where.
Awesome. Thanks, Rahul. Majida, who's next?
Andre?
I'm not sure if this is exactly right, but the way that it's set up, it kind of reminds me of like the scientific method.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Excellent. Thanks, Andre.
And then we have Hannah.
I noticed that before the due date, that it has like on the bottom it says signature, so like everyone must approve it and sign it before the due date.
Absolutely, Hannah. And that brings us to the point, like, when does this part get done? So project management, you have the problem, right? You want to create what we did last week, the problem, what Mahmoud talked about, the problem statement, the objectives, but you want to create this very clean, clear, easy to read, easy to understand document called the project charter. And what Hannah said is spot on. This has to be signed by John Smith, who's the investor, also known as the project sponsor, the project manager, which for this one is Ivan Johnson, and the finance manager, who's Anna Murray. So with your hand raised, why do you think this document is so important to create before you go into the next step? Why is this so critical in project management? Raise your hand and Majida will call on you.
Ashley Gavin?
I guess so that way everyone knows like what they have to do and their roles, and it's like clearly executed as to what has to be done and by like what specific date.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you, Ashley Gavin. And you're precisely right. It's so critical in project management that everybody's on the same page. Because can you imagine if everybody got into a sailboat and all started, paddling in different directions, you probably wouldn't get very far, would you? And project management is something where we're all on the same page. We know who's doing what. Things are clearly assigned. The budget is there. The milestones are there. Risks are there. People who are involved are all there. everyone can look at this and know exactly where they're going to land. So how about you do me a favor? Raise your hand if you're like, wow, I wish I had something like this in a time in my life. Maybe there was a time in your life, your career, where it could be something as simple as like you're going to meet your friends for brunch and there wasn't a very good plan. Can someone share a story or an example of a time where you're like, yeah, there wasn't a very, well thought out plan and things did not go well, work or personal? Majida, do you want to call on somebody?
Yeah. Okay. Julissa?
Good morning, everyone. So this kind of happens to me all the time. I'm gonna put myself on the spot. I like to think I'm an organized person, but then meeting with other people, it's like, especially through Zoom, I've had a lot of meetings that are like, well, I'm available this time, but you're not available that time.
Right.
And stuff like that. So it happens to me all the time.
Yep, I think it happens to a lot of us. Thanks, Julissa. Who else is up, Majida?
And then we have Manny, and then next we'll have Ricardo, and then Amna.
Well, first of all, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
And this takes me back when I was a senior in high school. And we forgot our wallet. So the only thing we had on us was exact change. So me and my buddies, we decided to go to our prom on public transportation. So little do we know, we took the wrong bus. We didn't look at where was the location, and we, instead of us ended up in White Plains, we took the 4 bus and we ended up, I don't know what part of Yonkers, but we had to get down over there. So for me, there was a not well planned. We missed our prom.
So you missed your prom because you failed to plan. Wow, that's a bummer. Thanks for sharing. All right. And who was next? Was it Ricardo?
So this was something very simple that happened. It was a friend's birthday, and all she wanted to do was, go to Six Flags, have do certain things, but everybody decided to do their own thing, and we're like, okay, this is the plan, but everybody decided to not follow the plan, so it just turned out to like a complete failure for her because she didn't get to do anything that she wanted. And if we had something like this, obviously, it's just a trip. But if something like this was present on the day of her birthday, it would have been a much better day for her, I believe.
Yep. Yeah, I think so too. Let's do 2 more, and then we're gonna keep moving. Who had their hand up next, Machida?
So then we have Amna and then Karina.
Okay.
Hi. So my story also dates back to like high school years. So it was like the day after the last day of school. So we had to go to pick up our report cards. And the whole year we're like, oh, on the last day, we're going to make a trip and we're going to go to Brooklyn just for the fun of it. But what happened was that day I left the house, I didn't get permission. My family was like, no, you can't go to Brooklyn, come straight home. So it was like, oh no, change of plans. I can't do that. So I was like, I'm still not going to go home, but where else can we go? So we decided to go under the bridge, but no one knew how to get there. It only took 2 buses, but since we kept messing up and we had to keep going back, it took us 5 buses to get there. And it originally just was supposed to take 2 buses.
Yeah, a lot of these stories have to do
So we
with
messed up that bad.
public
'Cause it was
transportation.
like last minute replan.
Yep, that's it. All right, and Karina, last comment, then we're gonna keep going.
Mine's is really short. Me and my family decided to do Night Beach. We'd done it before. And it was a blast the first time, but we forgot that we actually planned it the first time.
Right.
The second time we decided to go, nobody bring anything. Nobody bring any drinks, any blankets, any towels. We were really cold. We were hungry. And we ended up leaving 20 minutes in.
Oh. Yeah, so not a very pleasant experience because there was a lack of planning. Thank you for everybody who shared, and also want to remind you that your deliverable, which is due, is a discussion board sharing a time when you failed to plan and didn't level set expectations. So those stories you just shared, you can totally use. I just want to make sure we emphasize the value of having a document like this Not just in things as simple as, going to the beach with your family, or things as more complex as a project like the one we see on the screen. So the next thing you do after that is you do what's called a project scope document. This is also referred to as statement of work, or SOW for short. And this is when you thought like this last slide was detailed. This is when it really gets detailed. So I'll let you go ahead and read that. I'll give you 10 seconds. And then we'll talk about that final term on the bottom. So one of the really common terms that you'll hear a lot in project management is scope creep. Does anybody from their readings or their understanding of project management have an idea of what that is? You can raise your hand. If not, I can explain it. When someone says scope creep, what are they referring to? They're not referring to the weird guy on the team that nobody likes. He's not the scope creep. Scope creep is something different. All right, I thought it was funny. All right, Andre.
Is it more of like form of like with the agile method where you submit like a product or the end of the product or of the project, and they come back and they either don't like it or they would have something additionally added on?
It's close to that. It's really close. Like, so essentially, it's the last thing you said is what it is, Andre. It's this idea that says, imagine you're contracted to build a bridge. You do all the work to build a bridge, and then halfway through, the client says, "No, it'd be really nice to have like a park at the foot of the bridge. Can you build a park too?" It's like, well, time out here. Like, we didn't plan a park. We planned a bridge. You paid for a bridge. The whole entire, statement of work has a bridge. There's no park involved in this conversation. So having this standard standard operating document, or this project scope document, is so critical, because there's times where they'll try to sneak in extra stuff, and you can say, well, time out here. This was not what we agreed on from the beginning. And this is what's called scope creep. The nice thing with the agile method, Andre, which is what you mentioned earlier, is that scope creep is to be expected. It's always going to happen. Extra things are always going to pop up. Whereas if you're agile, fixing it is not that big of a deal. Okay. It's not, you've already done a little bit of work. You can go ahead and adjust as you go. Whereas the waterfall method, if you've already are 90% done or 95% done, and there's a bunch of things they want to change, it can be very costly and very time consuming. So yeah, you got it. So thank you so much. So what's included in the project scope document? These are all the tools. So we know stakeholders, we know some of the constraints, we know what needs to get done.
Eric?
Yep.
Julissa has a question in the chat. So is scope creep only a part of the waterfall method?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So yes, that's exactly right. So like in agile, like you expect, things to change, and that's why you stay agile. Whereas the waterfall method, scope creep is much more common. So yeah, excellent observation, Ashley. Thanks for asking. Because here's an example. I don't know if I share this with you. I think I'm going to share it with IO. Like, imagine that you were building a website, okay? And let's just say you're building a website and you get done with the whole entire thing. You do the waterfall method, A to Z, and your client says, "Oh, thank you so much for building this. Here's 120 changes I want you to make to the website." How would you feel? Pretty annoyed, right? You'd feel like, wait, what? You made 120 changes. But what if you said, "Hey, I'm going to build you the first page," and then they said, "Okay, make these 2 changes." Okay, no problem. Now I'm going to build you the second page. Okay, make these 4 changes. Yep, no problem. That's the difference between agile and waterfall. The agile is that smaller steps. You can go back and fix things, not a big deal. Waterfall is, hey, we're just going to knock it out. And then when a client comes back and says, "I want all these things changed," it can be really, really damaging. So that's the difference between the two. So we're going to skip that one. So scope creep, what needs to get done is just as important as what doesn't need to get done. So I wanted you to do an exercise. What time do we have right now? 10:55. I want you to take 10 minutes by yourself, solo work. Also, take a break if you need to as well. But what is an example of scope creep that happens to you as a year participant? So I already gave you one example. You need to study for a test, but all your friends are going out for night at the town. That's an example of scope creep because you have things that you want to accomplish. You have a goal you have to achieve, which is study for your exam. But something else has come up, which is outside of your plan, and that's an example of scope creep. So we're gonna take a 10-minute break. Take 5 minutes and think about what other examples do you have of scope creep in your time at Year Up, and then 5 minutes to use the bathroom and get a cup of water. All right, see you soon. All right, folks, it's 11:05. Please come back on camera if you're able. Hope you had a nice little break and you got some time to think about scope creep in your function here as a participant at Year Up. So in the chat box, what was your examples you had? So my example was I have a big assignment that's due, or I'm sorry, I'm studying for a big test, but my friends text me that they're all going to go hang out. So that's an example of times when I'm going to get off my goal and go do something different. What other examples have you thought about that you can put into the chat box so we can spend a few minutes discussing? There's lots of ways this happens in our working world. All right, Jesus says scope creep can come in when there are tight deadlines, meaning I would have to cut down on any personal task or time. Yeah, excellent, Jesus. Can you think of an example of that has happened in Mod 1 for you where you had like a really quick turnaround and you had to like say no to something in your personal life to make it happen? Do you have an example?
Yes, I do. So this actually, I felt kind of like that my deadlines were tight when I was operations manager for Cadaver's class. I remember, knowing that I was gonna have to work on my presentations, on providing good information for the other participants. And so I kind of knew that, going into Saturday and Sunday that I wasn't gonna be able to enjoy it as much, right? So I was mostly gonna be sitting down, studying, committing myself to doing these tasks. So yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, so that's an example of you had a big week coming up, and you want to do other things, but you had to jump in. Excellent example, Jesus. Thank you, Ashley Ross. You don't understand how to do deliverable, and you need to attend office hours, even though you have something planned. Yeah, that's a really good example. Thank you, Ashley Ross. During finals week, my friends wanted to play volleyball, but I needed to study. Yeah, that's hard to say no to fun things like that. Ricky, thank you. Having deliverables on the same day. I spend a lot of time in the shower, but sometimes I take a short one so I don't get tired. That's true, Rahul. We can all get distracted by things. I'm surprised nobody put video games or stuff like that in the chat. Maybe people don't want to discuss that part. Hannah being the assistant instructor twice. Majida says I finish all my deliverables prior to the weekend. Check it on Saturday, make sure my assignments are done. Oh, there you go. So you can start again on Sunday. Love it. Our project is in now, so you get an idea of how you want to go about it. And guess what? Now it's a group project. You have to rework your whole strategy. Yeah, that's definitely a challenge. Definitely. Yeah, these are all good. Excellent. I consider video games work and self-care. There you go. Cut that off as soon as the program started. Is that video games, Ricky, you're talking about? You cut off video games? Wow, what made you want to do that? That's a pretty drastic change.
I would spend a lot of time playing with my friends. So, during quarantine, that's all I was doing with my friend. And I told them, as soon as program starts, we're not gonna be able to play anymore. So just let's play as much as we can. And that's how it's been. I haven't touched my Xbox since, I guess, August, as you can say.
Wow. I'm gonna give you a clap for that because that takes a lot of self-discipline. Nice job, Ricky. All right. So now we have everything kind of planned out. We know what we're doing. We're now going to get into the execution phase. But before we get into the execution phase, we have to do one last thing. All right. And that's we have to get everybody on the same page. So I'm going to ask a question to the group. I want you to give me a green checkbox if you think it's one and a red X if you think it's the other. So you have everything written down. You're the PM. Everything's, documented. And now you're going to have one last checkpoint. Should that checkpoint be a meeting, green check, or should that checkpoint be an email? Which one do you think? Green check is definitely have a meeting. Red X is like, it could be an email. It's not a big deal.
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
Of course, Luis. So you're the project manager. The project charter is done. You have all the documentation ready to go, and now you're going to send it to all the stakeholders. So the sponsors, the project team, everybody who's involved on this project. This is your one last checkpoint before you start executing on the project. Should that be a meeting, a green check, or should that just be an email, red X? Seeing 16, 18 green checks and 2 red X's. Let's take a look at who said what. Chelsea B, why do you think there should be a meeting and not just an email?
I think it should be a meeting since it's our final check-in before we begin, just to make sure that maybe somebody didn't see the email or something and they had something to contribute or to change at the last second before we begin. So we see each other all face to face and all be on the same page, and I'm ready to go.
Sure. Yeah, thank you so much. So most people will say that you should have what is called a kickoff meeting. A kickoff meeting has three main purposes. It is to get the team energized and excited about what's going on, the project. It's to establish common purposes and to also solidify the team leaders. So here's a fun fact. When I was candidating for this position at Year Up, I had to do a 15-minute like practice teach, and I actually did my whole entire practice teach on kickoffs, which was kind of what helped me get the job. So I'm very passionate about kickoff meetings and how valuable they are, because the reality of it is you have a lot of moving parts in a project. You have a lot of people, you have a lot of money, you have a lot of ideas, and to get into a room together, whether it's virtual or in person, doesn't have to be long. It's not a 4-hour long meeting, but it's just 30 minutes to an hour. Let's just get together. Yeah, like David Torres said, like Monday morning kickoff. Let's all level set. Let's make sure we're all on the same page. Let's make sure we're all good, because what Chelsea said is right. Not everybody reads emails. Not everybody's going to see it. And also a lot of things get lost in text. I don't know if you've noticed that when you email somebody, they might interpret your email a little bit differently than how you intended to say it. So any other reasons why you guys think, besides those three, that the kickoff meeting is so important before you execute on a project? Like, why do you think that should matter? And you can raise your digital hand. If not, we'll keep going along. Yeah, Ashley Ross.
Hi, good morning. I think that it really opens the door for communication. And in a meeting, some people might have more creativity than just writing a quick 1-minute email.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. It creates a doorway for creativity. I love it, and gives people a clarity to get understanding of what's going on. I love it. All right. Thank you, Ashley. Manny?
I would say that the kickoff meetings are important because like you mentioned, right? It says get the team energized, establish common purposes, establish team leaders, and now everybody can have an idea on what is going to be done. For example, like establishing the common purposes, like giving tasks to each other, establishing a team leader who's going to be in charge in case something goes wrong and who to relay on.
Yeah, excellent. I love it. Thank you so much. And also, it's a chance for all the project team and all the stakeholders to get to know each other as well. There's just something that happens when you're in a room with people and you can see, okay, like this person's handling the finances, this person's handling the operations, this person's the project manager. I would feel good about that, knowing who my teammates are. So that's the importance of the kickoff meeting. David Torres says, so there isn't a sporadic cluster of confusion. Wow, that's a mouthful. Jalissa, do you have a comment?
Yeah, so now that you've mentioned that, I remember the video that you had showed us last week about how important it is that we know what the stakeholders are. And the girl in the video said that it's good to know them like face to face, but because of COVID, we're having like Zoom meetings and stuff. So that would be like the perfect opportunity to meet stakeholders and get to know them, because that's a very important part of the project as a whole.
Absolutely, you're 100% correct. Thank you so much for that comment. The reality of it is that work and relationships are all built on trust, credibility, rapport. And if you just send an email out and you're like, I don't know who, Neftali Rivera is. I'm not sure who this person is. What are they doing again? It just makes stakeholders feel uneasy as opposed to all being in the same room and seeing one another. So it looks like everybody's cold. So, all right, well, I'm sorry to hear that. They just turned the heater on in my office, so I feel pretty good. And the way that you can look at a kickoff meeting is imagine that it's like a rocket ship taking off. Okay, anybody here into aerospace? And one of my heroes is Elon Musk. He just sent out his first manned rocket like 3 or 4 months ago. And can you imagine like how tacky it would be if like the rocket ship going off into space, if Elon Musk was just like, everything is a go for the mission. Okay, have a nice trip, and just sent an email. That would be kind of tacky, wouldn't it? It's like, come on, this is really exciting. Like this, this big day that you've been working so hard for is finally here. You want to be there. You want to be present. Yeah, SpaceX. Thank you so much, Usman. All right, Majida, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. So what is the kickoff meeting? It does these things. It gets the team energized, establishes the purpose, establishes team leaders like the rocket ship going off into space. You see the takeoff is not the mission. The mission is the mission, but this is the kickoff. It gets you started. All right. Last thing I want to discuss before we wrap up for the day. How many of you are familiar with a SWOT analysis? You can just raise your hand in your screen if you've heard of this term before. If not, okay. So Majid is familiar with it. Awesome. Chelsea is. Thank you. So a SWOT analysis is essentially you take an inventory on a project, on an idea. You can even do it on yourself, or you ask yourself, sort of 4 big ideas. It's, in a quadrant form. We're actually going to practice it here in a minute. But the first one is like, what is a strength? So that's an advantage you can control, the weakness, the opportunities, and the threats. So this is really important in project management because you want to get a full picture on what's going on. And we as people have a tendency to either lean towards, the threats or the opportunities, or the weaknesses, or we lean towards the strengths. We overestimate or we underestimate ourselves and our abilities. So a SWOT analysis is really, really helpful. So what I want to do, we actually have not done this before in this class, so I want to try doing a Jamboard. A Jamboard is a Google tool. And we're going to do a Jamboard about a SWOT analysis of owning a car in New York City. So let's go ahead and get this pulled up. I'll show you what I'm talking about. If you don't know what a Jamboard is, just give me a second. All right. So this is an example of a Jamboard. You use these a lot in project management. But this is, what I put down from my notes of the 4 quadrants of owning a car in New York City. So what's the strength? It's easier to get around. It's a lot easier to drive somewhere than it is to take the train or the bus, as we learned about the stories from Manny's prom. So it's a lot easier just to get in a car and drive, right? Or Amna's trip to Brooklyn. What's the weakness of having a car in New York City? Parking is the worst. It's the worst, right? Especially if you live in a place like I do where they clean the streets 4 times a week. That can get really, really old. And garages cost, a lot of money to park your car in a garage. What's an opportunity of having a car in New York City? You can make money on Uber Eats or something like that, which would be kind of cool. And then what's a threat? I mean, obviously the first one, most obvious one, your car could get stolen. That's a very clear threat. You have a car, it's a piece of, something that you own sitting out on the street, all day, every day. So that obviously that's not ideal. So like I said, this is something I'm going to try. We have not done this before. I just want to let's see if this works. I'm going to give everybody in this room access to this Jamboard, and you can go ahead and click on the link and go ahead and add a sticky note to one of those 4 quadrants. Yeah, your friend's asking for rides every day is a threat. You could put that up there, Ashley. So go ahead and pull it up, and let's see if we can get it to work. We'll have some fun here. All right, so if you don't know how to use it, on the left over here, you can click on sticky note, and you can open up your sticky note. So hit and run, definitely a threat. The police, yeah, where does that go? Oh, this is nice, it's working.
Hey Eric, it's David.
Yeah.
It's still loading up for me.
Okay, so what we can do is this happens sometimes with Jamboards is once you're done, you can exit out of this because then that way everybody has a chance to log in. They don't let more than like 20 people on at a time. So once you're once you're done, you can leave this and then we'll be good. Then you're not really a New Yorker. Group pigeons. You could be a driver for Uber or Lyft. You're warm in brick weather. Your car might break down. That could be a threat. Weaknesses. You're always the DD. I don't know if that's more of a weakness or an opportunity. That could be an opportunity because you're like, hey, everyone, pay for gas and I'll drive you home after, tickets, car wash. Yes. A lot of traffic at rush hour, car breaking down. Someone breaking into your car or stealing your tires. Insurance. Awesome. So that's an example of a SWOT analysis. All right. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. Yep. Excellent. Thank you all. So let's go ahead and try something different. Let me pull up my notes. The next one we're going to do is your success in the Year Up program. So let me go ahead and share my screen. We're going to move to the next slide. So this is from the previous one. I'm going to delete that one. Your success in the Year Up program. Go to slide 2. What are the strengths? What are the advantages that you control? So maybe one is a hard worker. All right, that's a strength. If you don't know where to go to, there we go. Looks like you guys are getting it. Weakness, video games. Oh, where'd mine go? There we go. Opportunities, networking with professionals. Threats. Excellent, excellent. This is kind of fun, isn't it? All right. Go ahead and stop sharing. So go ahead and raise your hand if you want to share why is doing a SWOT analysis so important in a project. What do you think? We just practiced it 2 different areas, owning a car in New York City or your success at Year Up. Majida, I see your hand. Why is this so important in planning a project? What do you think, Majida?
Because sometimes when you're planning on doing something and if you're able to do a SWOT prior to it, like how you were able to see the posters, a lot of them were gathered by weaknesses and threats. So like that was very overwhelming rather than the strengths and opportunities. So that kind of can give you an overview of whether you should really be like actually doing this, like taking the next big step or not. So yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I love it. You're totally right. It gives you the perspective. What Manny put in the chat box as well. What's your point of view about this project? What are you feeling anxious about? What do you think we're gonna do really well in? What do you think is some of our opportunities here? Totally, Majida, you hit the nail on the head. I think Andre's hand was next. Then David, Andre.
It kind of gives you a couple of my colleagues said, different perspective. Instead of looking things like a linear, what's the next step? You could see everything from a larger scale, like a bigger picture, and know what to possibly expect while operating during this project.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so critical. When you're on a team, everybody has a different optic. Everybody has a different perspective. And to think that what you said is that it's linear or that it's binary is not a very good way to think as a project manager. Excellent, Andre. David?
Yeah, it's important because a SWOT analysis can help you realize what you're lacking on and how you can better it. And also it shows the pros and cons of, what it is you're supposed to do as far as a project.
Excellent. Thank you, David. Mohammed, I saw your hand was up.
Yeah, like as David said, I think like knowing what you can control and cannot control, I think is a key during the project management.
Yes, it absolutely is. Knowing what you can't control, what is inside my control, that's an opportunity. What's outside of my control, that's a threat for sure. And Karina, last comment. You had your hand up.
David said what I wanted to say.
Okay. Not a problem at all. So that's really the what I want to share with everybody today for planning. It's the idea of scope of work, like what's within our limitations of what we're going to accomplish. Like what is the kickoff meeting and what is the SWOT analysis, making sure that we do that. So can someone raise their hand and explain what the plan is for this class the next 2 days? Because I want to make sure everyone's on the same page, because every single time we have the schedule change, somebody always emails me and says, why wasn't there a class today? So who can raise their hand and tell us what's happening tomorrow and Wednesday at Europe? Yes, Majida.
So today we have classes as usual, and then tomorrow there are no classes at all. Go and vote, guys. And then on Wednesday we do not have any project management class only. Kachun's and Vanessa's class will be going as is on the regular time. And on Wednesday we will be tasked to do our deliverable that you have left us.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Majida. And then for those of you who are in LCJ, is Kara having her class on Wednesday? Jesus is giving me a thumbs up. She is. Okay, great. Thank you. And Ricardo, do you have a question or comment? Majida covered it. Okay. Majida, can you please read the deliverable? I'll just put in the chat box and then we'll do any questions and we'll call it a class.
So scope, statement of work, and kickoff meetings are all about one thing: level setting. Being on the same page is critical to success. On the discussion board, share a time in which you didn't have clear expectations and what happened as a result. 100 words that are due by Monday, 11:59 p.m., and respond to at least 2 posts, 50 words due Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. Using the idea that you wrote about in Unit 1, watch video in Schoology on work breakdown structure and write a 1-page document on how you would break down your team to build your new project out. No class tomorrow or Wednesday. Go vote if you haven't already.
Can we give Majida a clap for being an excellent assistant instructor? For those of you who are unsure about how to do the work breakdown structure, I put some resources inside Schoology that you can take a look at, and you can feel free. I have office hours today to drop by. And the last thing I want to say before we wrap up class is I know the election is tomorrow. I know there's there's a lot going on right now in our country. I just want to encourage you to please, take care of yourself. One of the things that I've done for myself is I've vowed I'm not going to spend all day looking at my Twitter or my Facebook because it's just going to cause me a lot of anxiety and stress that I personally don't need. Right now, I've already voted. I voted on Saturday. My civic duties behind me, and I just don't want to, stress myself out. And if you're overwhelmed about, what's going on in our country, please just email me. I'm happy to talk with you about, what you're going through, help you process it. I'm not going to judge you or say, anything. I'm happy to be a listening ear. But the reason we're taking tomorrow off and Wednesday off is because I know that these things can be stressful for some people. Maybe not for everybody. Maybe some of you are like, whatever, I don't really care. But for some of us, maybe it can be highly stressful. So we as a staff at Year Up just want you to know that you can take some time to yourself, do what's good for you. Go for a walk, do yoga, read a book, take a nap, whatever it is that you need for your self-care. And yes, as Pablo said, if you're able to, please go vote. So any other questions or comments before we log off? You can raise your hand and then we can call it a class. All right, everybody, have a great day and see you Thursday. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Eric.
Okay.